I do think my long-term special interest is people in general. And, it's kind of funny to say, but it's true. There's some evidence that because I was undiagnosed for so much of my life, people became my special interest because I was trying to figure things out that I didn't understand. And I think there's probably some validity to that. Welcome back to Divergent Paths. I'm your host, Dr. Regina McMenomy. And yes, I'm a doctor, just not the kind that prescribes anything except maybe rest and self-compassion. Today, we're diving into a topic that hits close to my heart, and probably yours too, if you've ever fallen headfirst into a passion that felt like more than a hobby. We're talking about special interests, what they are, why they matter, and why they're absolutely not optional for so many of us with neurodivergent brains. My co-host Russ from the DIY for Business podcast is here to ask all the questions and maybe discover a special interest or two of his own. Spoiler, he knew them before we started the episode. So stay tuned, and thanks for listening to Divergent Paths.
Is podcasting for you a special interest?
Yes, actually it is.
Is it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
In talking about the special interests, and in my notes that you prepared, because this is your special interest as well, making notes for me. You say it's an obsession.
It can
brings
be,
you joy, but it's an obsession. That's the word that's sticking out to me.
Yeah.
So are you obsessed by this?
Obsessed. I'm obsessed with people.
Okay.
Not a person necessarily, but people in general, and how people interact and how they form their identities and how they define themselves and how they experience life. I think that podcasting is a subset of that as my overarching special interest of my life.
I went right into it there.
You did.
About your special interest, because I like the example there. And I've got one for me to bring up, but before we get into that, let's talk about what is a special interest.
Right. So a special interest is something that is usually something that persists throughout your life or over, I won't say throughout your life, because for some people they do start very young and they stay with them for a long time. They're also something that you can kind of come back and forth to. If you want to look at, you brought up podcasting as a special interest for me. I've been on 5 or 6 different podcasts in the last 10 or 15 years. I started my very first podcast based on my dissertation research. I had decided to do a podcast instead of sort of traditional publishing because I wanted to continue to have the kinds of conversations while I was writing my dissertation. I wanted those stories were so valuable, and the research I had done, I felt really needed to be heard and understood. And the best way I thought to take a bunch of interviews I had done with people and get that to other people was going to be a podcast. And then I found that the podcasting community is always, it's just always a great community. Podcasters are usually very open and welcoming and engaging. And there's a lot of just kind of
that's some amazing people doing this. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. That's, and once I realized that was what this community was about guesting on people's shows and come on and I'll talk about your show and you talk about my show. And just that sense of true community, I feel comes out of podcasting. And so I think that is definitely a special interest. They generally do bring a sense of joy. We generally demonize obsession in our society because we think it detracts from the things you're supposed to be doing. And I would challenge anybody who is listening who thinks that their special interest is a bad thing because it has been a huge part of their lives, to recognize that in a capitalist society, your work is supposed to be the thing that overarches your entire identity and your existence. And that there's no reason why your special interest can't be the most important thing in your life.
Well, could work be the special interest?
It can. A lot of people base, their careers on their special interests. I mean, how many people end up becoming veterinarians because they love animals, right?
Right. Well, I would think too, just, the the entrepreneurship, the just
Right.
thinking about running the business and doing all of the things that are associated with that, where it's just a driver, where it's like, is this an interest or is it a,
Right.
is it a business?
Right.
They're just, the obsession thing is the thing that
Yeah.
gets me, because I've seen plenty of entrepreneurs
Sure. I
that
mean,
fall into that.
I'm learning that, there is a lot that you need to have a lot of balance to be an entrepreneur. Like
Totally.
it is very easy to get into some habits that I had when I was teaching too. And when I was teaching, I never took any time off. Like I never took time not to answer the emails or anything. And that's part of why it led to such severe burnout for me. And I have to be careful with this. But when I launched Divergent Paths, when I had the idea for Divergent Paths, it was as a podcast. I was just going to start a new hobby podcast. It was going to be, this thing that I was doing on the side from my paid labor, and something that was just going to be fun. And then other circumstances happened, and I ended up, leaving a job unexpectedly, and realized that this had been the seed for the business. Like, this had been the I wanted to talk to people who have gone through late diagnosis like I have, and want to, coach people in that. And all that really stems out of, I laugh because I do think my long-term special interest is people. It's just people in general. And, it's kind of funny to say, but it's true. There's some evidence that because I was, late diagnosed, or I was undiagnosed for so much of my life, people became my special interest because I was trying to figure things out that I didn't understand. And I think there's probably some validity to that. But it still persists. Like, I still love hearing people's stories. I love hearing, when I switched from literature, right, to wanting to study more cultural studies versus, straight literature, because I wanted to be able to study living people instead of, my line is dead white guys, and because a lot of literature programs focus on, white male canons. So, I wanted to get out of that. And so all of that kind of feeds into, I read stories to try to understand a world that didn't make sense to me. Like, that's why I read so much when I was growing up. And that's why I studied literature, because I loved reading and I loved writing. And then I realized, oh, but I really want to have this with other people. I really want to talk to living people about things. So
I have a cousin who is autistic and has a hyper focus, I guess you'd say, on, or I don't know if you'd say, actually, wait, before I even get into that, what's the difference between this and hyper focus? Hyper focus is like temporary session, right?
It can be, yeah. Yeah, yeah. And
Okay.
special interest can have you can hyper focus on a special interest. And then, like, for a lot of people, I think who have ADHD as their neurodivergent, path, will switch, will get very, very focused on one thing, and then lose that focus on it, and, kind of launch into something different. It's like there's a longstanding joke about like how many craft supplies people who have ADHD have, because they start like one craft and then they lose interest in it, and then they start another
Right.
one, and then have all the supplies for the ones that you lost interest in.
But it could be something like, so, his obsession is Michael Jackson.
Yeah.
Loves everything, loves the dances, loves the
Yeah.
songs,
Yep.
Like that's been,
Yep.
a big focus. And,
Yeah.
if you want to know something,
Exhaustive knowledge, like,
yeah,
could with see, I don't my autism doesn't manifest in me having like exhaustive knowledge of things, other than like, well, I guess I have a lot an exhaustive knowledge of neurodivergence now.
right.
But yeah, but that ability to know dates and names, and probably like all of that like statistical stuff. I don't track anything like that with any of my special interests, but a lot of people do. A lot of people can give you all of that kind of exhaustive information.
So it could be that, or it could be you're just jumping between different
Mm-hmm.
fixations. Like
Yeah.
I like this right now. I like that
Yeah.
right now. What about when that fixation is something that is destructive?
I mean, that's definitely something that can happen. I would probably say that's one of the things that was the challenges that my brothers have faced with their addictions. I think that's,
Right.
that they, got into bad cycles in part because they were neurodivergent and undiagnosed.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah.
Why do you think that these things are so important for somebody that's neurodivergent? Why do we do this?
I think a lot of times special interests help regulate your nervous system. So I've seen this with my daughter where if she is flooded and is having a hard time emotionally, I can't often get her to like take a deep breath to like reset because breathing doesn't help her. It doesn't, like, breathing's always been mine. Like if I start to spin out or whatever, I know I can stop and take a couple of deep breaths and at least like get myself regulating a little bit. Breathing doesn't help her. Drawing attention to her breath makes her more anxious because then it becomes something she needs to do that she usually doesn't have to think about, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's a very different. So I had to learn, okay, this is not a coping strategy. What I discovered when she was in her Taylor Swift era was I could ask her what her favorite Taylor Swift song was. Wait, can you remind me what your favorite Taylor Swift song is? And that would help bring her out of her spiral. And the same one, it was Chapel Roan. So she doesn't have a current musical interest right now. So I'm kind of at a loss, but
That would be for me, by the way, that would be Tim McGraw and the song Tim McGraw from Taylor Swift, and then
oh,
Pink Pony Club. So
of course.
yeah,
Okay. Okay, great. Thank you.
although The Giver is fantastic,
Yeah.
just in case you're asking. But
Thanks.
how do you tell, like, because so many people were, into Taylor Swift at the time, right? You had
Yeah.
Swifties everywhere. How do
Yeah.
you know it's a special interest versus just your everyday Swiftie?
I think that there are quite a few Taylor Swift or Swiftie fans who could probably name exactly what year or what day, the albums came out, can give you like a rundown of which songs are on which albums. There's a depth of knowledge, I think, that goes in with special interests that you're not going to see in like hobbies necessarily. And it does have that regulating ability to help, relax and help you calm down and help you decompress. But it also gives you a sense of control and a sense of identity. So, like, I love to go to Comic Cons, right? Like,
Right.
I haven't been to the San Diego Comic Con, but I've gone to many of my local Comic Cons. And that's one of the things that I love is being part of that community. Like, I remember the first time I went to Penny Arcade Expo, because gaming is another one of like the special interests that's kind of persisted. It's changed now. I don't do video games now. I play mostly board games, but gaming has definitely been another thread. So the first time I went to Penny Arcade Expo and I was standing in line to get into the showroom, like for the floor to open. And I just remember checking, like, the energy felt so, like, everybody was so excited and they were playing some video, I can't remember, and everybody was kind of dancing and singing to like this internet sensation video that had happened that I can't remember what it was. This was a long time ago. But everybody was dancing and singing and really like just like the energy was so great because everybody, and I'm like, I'm surrounded by people who are excited about something I find exciting.
Right.
And I love that sense. Was it about a year ago? I went to see The Princess Bride, and Carrie Elways gave a little talk after
Oh, that's cool.
the movie, and it was great. But that was great. Like, listening to him talk was fantastic. He told some great behind the scenes stories. But what was really amazing was to sit and watch a movie that I'm very familiar with. Like, The Princess Bride is a movie I put on when I'm sick and I don't feel good. Like that is the movie that I watch. So I've watched it many, many times. I quote from it regularly. I just showed it to my daughter a month ago for the first time.
Oh, wow.
And now she is like, I'll say something and she's like, that's from the movie. It is. Nice. And so she knows now that like I've been quoting it forever. Funny aside, we're watching Young Sheldon right now, and Vincini is in, the actor who played Vincini is in Young Sheldon.
Oh, nice.
She was very excited about that. She's like, hey, he was in the movie. That's funny. Anyway.
Now you got to show the Wonder Years, but yeah.
Right. Yes, exactly. Yes. Yeah. So, that energy and that, being able to be in a movie theater with other people who were quoting lines and knowing, and we're starting to recognize that like I was saying some of the lines out loud, and then like other people were saying their favorite lines out loud. And like, you could just like, it was just really nice.
Right.
And that's part of, I think, what special interests provide to people who are neurodivergent. They provide that connection in a way that sometimes your brain is fighting against you, connecting to people and to things and to-do lists and to life, right? And so when you can connect and you can both be like, oh, my favorite line from this movie is, or remember that scene in that game that we both played, or, whatever it is, it adds that continuity that it's really important.
Yeah. Well, I would say, I mean, you're describing it as a bit of an escape.
Definitely. Right? Yeah. I mean, if we have to escape, like,
yeah, I mean,
maybe that's the real life, and what we're escaping is capitalism. I don't know.
Right. Right. Well, it's an escape from just like the everyday thing, like whatever it is, from work, let's say, or like right. You have these like, passion projects that you're doing, and it just makes you feel good because
right.
you're aware of it, what's going on.
Yeah.
I feel like though, people are often shamed for that, right?
Yeah.
Like, oh,
absolutely.
Well, why are you wasting your time?
Yeah. Exactly.
On this thing.
Yeah.
Why
right.
would you do
How
this?
childish.
You're not making any money from it. Like, I feel like that is something that happens a lot in our society.
Or that it should be something that you outgrow, right? Because if it's like right. comic books, or if it is video games or board games or whatever, like, why are you playing those as an adult? Well, they're just as fun as an adult as they were when you were a kid. Like, there's no reason why, And if it's bringing you joy, then, and it is something that you feel passionate and you have a community around.
Yeah.
Why? And it's not hurting anybody, and you're not hurting yourself.
Right.
Right.
Right. Well, it's almost like too, I mean, I don't know, like, you mentioned the, being you should outgrow this, or, that's for kids or whatever.
Yeah. Yep.
I mean, I go to, so, I've seen people dress in these like Comic-Con type costumes, right? Like, okay, we're not going to on a daily basis dress up in this amazing, crazy, like cool costume that was put together. But like, you get to do it there, and you get to be around your peeps that are also all dressed as Star Wars characters.
I mean,
right?
Right. Yeah.
It's a good feeling. It's a feeling. It's a community feeling that you're talking about. So
one of my favorite things about Rose City Comic-Con last year was seeing people who are dressed up as Barbie from the Barbie movie, right? So they were cosplaying Barbie.
Right.
And so so I yelled out a couple of times, "Hi, Barbie," like they do in the movie, and they yell it back, right? So like,
nice.
Here's a person I don't know, but we have this like connection. They are outwardly expressing their interest in this, movie and this character, and I am able to connect with them because of it, right?
Yeah.
And that's the magic. Like that's the magic, like that it gives you that, like when you find someone else who has your same special interest. Like we were talking about this before the show, but I brought up that one of my friends has a special interest of the wives of King Henry, right? And Russ said,
did they go to see Six? Or
right. Yeah. And I got to tell the story about how I found out about Six, And I knew that my friend was going to be beside herself about this musical. And so I went to her and I'm like, listen, it's coming to our town in like 3 weeks. Do you want to go? It was a couple weeks ago. And yeah, and we immediately bought tickets, and we got nosebleed seats because, you know, it's expensive to go do these things, but it didn't matter because it was amazing. And yeah, and I told her, I'm like, you know, this is like, she's like, I can't believe I didn't know about this. Like, I can't believe I didn't already know about this. Well, since then, so she hadn't listened to the soundtrack. I'd listened to the soundtrack a couple of times before we went. She hadn't listened to the soundtrack, but in the weeks since we have gone, she is now in the top 0.05% of people who have listened to the Six soundtrack on Spotify.
Nice.
And this is like just a number of weeks, right?
Right. Wow. Yeah, I will say I got that a little bit with Hamilton. I do fall into this history thing a bit.
You do. You like
you know.
presidents.
I love presidents. I love the presidential history stuff. It's so much fun. Like I like going to the museums or the libraries.
The libraries,
and learning about it. And just I don't know. It's I will definitely have a history documentary on. So there's that special obsession. Like that's one of the ones that I was going to mention of myself is history.
Yep.
And then like there's another one, which is Johnny Carson.
That's right. Yes.
Right? Like I love Johnny Carson. Like I loved that show. And I was thinking about that, right? And I was thinking like really like when I'm not feeling great, when there's something going on in my life, when there's something that's troubling me, I will watch Johnny Carson at night to fall asleep to. I will throw on YouTube and it's this comforting thing. And I'm sort of wondering now, does that fall into special interests? Like this like, because like what I think about too, like another obsession would be Disney. Like I love watching Disneyland documentaries and whatnot because I think Walt did some not so great things, but also some great things.
Yeah.
And
also, it's suspected that he was autistic as well.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting.
I just saw that. I cannot confirm nor deny a historical figure's neurodivergent traits. Yeah. But I have seen a few people and a few articles talking about the fact that he that he was autistic. So,
well, okay. The reason why I bring up Disney is because I'm bringing up two separate things here. It's like, they do when you're walking down Main Street, they're pumping out the smell of something.
Right.
Because it takes you back, that nostalgic thing.
Yep.
I'm sort of wondering, and I think Johnny Carson is partially that. It takes me back to a time.
I was going to say Johnny Carson's nostalgic for you, right? like Princess Bride is for me.
Yeah. So it takes you back to this comforting place. And then I would think like, taking it back to what you said earlier of like, you go to this Comic-Con and, I just did a Star Wars themed show. So I'll talk about that. But I went to the Star Wars thing and everybody there was like, we all had something in common. Right. We all felt the same way. Right. Like we all enjoyed Star Wars. We all liked Star Wars. And it felt like a very comforting place almost instantly.
Yes.
Right. And it's like, I feel like these are such a great thing for us. Like they're a very healthy thing for us.
They are a very healthy thing for us. Yes. And having that continuity, like think about how much things change. Like so we've known each other since we were 16. We've mentioned this on previous shows, but I
was 16. You were like 17, 18.
I wasn't. I turned 17. We met.
To add a few years to Regina,
you do like to add a few. I'm for all the listeners. I am like 3 months and 3 days older than Russ.
Yeah, something like that.
Exactly. But if we think about like when we were 16 and we met and we worked at our first job together, and we did not go to high school together. So we do not have a continuity of we were in the same like high school class. We went to different schools. We now at this point in our lives, we see each other once a year. Maybe for these, but in person.
For these than in person.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. But we don't have a continuity of Russ stayed not far from where we grew up. He's, not far from where we both grew up, but neither one of us have our parents no longer live in the homes that we were in, that he and I grew up in. Kids give you a certain level of continuity because, like, they're your kids. But we both have older siblings, so we don't really have like close sibling relationships that, we might have had, right? I'm not really close with a lot of my cousins. I have a lot of cousins, but I'm not really close with them because I left, the area. So like those are people who are usually your connections, your touchstones, right? So Russ and I are absolutely touchstones for each other's lives because there has never been any time in our lives that we haven't at least been in touch with each other. Like we never lost touch. There was never a time when we weren't talking. So we are to each other a certain amount of continuity. And I think special interests give that same kind of thing, like being able to know I can go to a Comic-Con and I can find my people. That you're going to find people at a presidential library who are going to have that connection. You're going to have like the same kind of energy or feel to you, or a Star Wars thing, or whatever it is. And I think that continuity is really important, especially in modern lives where we are more likely, like I don't live in the state I grew up in. Like I am 2 states away. I'm living a very different life than I did. I don't drive down the streets where I grew up, like I might have if I had lived a kind of different life. So these things provide a certain level of connection and community, and they really do kind of shape who we are. I would say in your sharing here of your interests, I think the topics are less important to you. I definitely, like, I would have pegged, if you would have asked me what one of your special interests were, I would have guessed presidents. That would have been the thing that would have come off the top of my head. And because I know you've traveled specifically to towns
that I have
to go to presidential libraries. And if you are traveling for work and you happen to, you will, be in a town, you will make the time to go to those. So I would have guessed that one. I wouldn't have guessed the Disney one, but you said specifically Disney documentaries. And I'm thinking there's a certain history component here.
Totally.
That is more the overarching thing, that you find certain things that you have a deep interest in and that you want to know the history. Because like if somebody tells me they have a special interest in Disney, I'm expecting that they're going to Disney bound. And that's kind of like the low level cosplay that people do at like the Disney, locations, because you can't go in costume to Disney, right? You can't do what you do at Comic-Con. You cannot do that at, Disneyland, because they have people, dressed up in costumes there. But you can Disney bound, where you can make an outfit that looks inspired by a character or whatnot. So I'm thinking somebody who Disney bounds, who's somebody who is has an obsessive ability to be able to name all of the movies, or like there's different eras of like the Disney movies. So like there was like the original era, and then there's like the resurgence when we were in like high school and like early college, with like the 90s had a big resurgence, and then like the more modern ones now, and now the like live action nightmares that they make for whatever reasons they make.
Now there's the money grab time.
Now there's money grab time. Like why? Why are we doing this anyway? But yes, I think it's so someone who I would think that had Disney as a special interest would be more that, where you're like, I want to know about Walt Disney, the guy.
Right. I want to know and I think part of that too is this, like, I went to Disneyland a lot as a kid, like almost every year. And so like I got to see it. So it's also a part of my history and history that I experienced. Sure. And, that's why I like the 80s history, 90s history, stuff like that too, because it's part of what I experienced. It's I agree with you. That I think it's more about the historical
aspect
element of it.
Right.
Which,
doesn't make it less value or doesn't diminish it in any way as a special interest. I just wanted to I think a lot of times people will be like, I don't have a special interest. And then they start talking and I'm like, oh, by the way, you
Right.
just spent half an hour telling me about hippos.
Right.
And you know more information about hippos than anybody needs to know.
Right.
Hate to break it to you. There
All
might
I
be a
know is
little
they got
egotism in there,
those little funny ears.
right? The little babies with their,
You
oh
know,
God,
it's
they're
cute.
so cute.
So, I mean, that's the thing. Like, like some stuff, when we're talking about things like, on the podcast, I'll try to, it's like, okay, we've got an open mic to the world and everybody's
Mm-hmm.
listening. So you
Yeah.
do have that little aspect to it. But what's funny about this episode and talking about like these special interests, it's like, oh yeah, I'll talk about them all day.
Yeah.
So it's like it makes me
Yeah.
feel comfortable to even just talk about them
Yeah.
on the
Exactly.
podcast. It's that,
Yep.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
it's
And
interesting.
yeah, we have this whole culture of kind of hustle culture, right? Where everybody feels like they need to this is capitalism too, where you feel like you need to make money,
Mhm.
with potentially with your special interest or in some other ways. And I think that one of the things that just having a special interest just because you enjoy it, that's that's totally valid too. It doesn't need to be anything more
Right.
than just that. And
Well, and that's the thing
yeah.
too. I mean, some people will have the special interest that they'll try to make to, turn it into a career. And then
Right.
like I did with the DJ and event company, it's like all of a
Yeah.
sudden it's less about the special
Yep.
interest of
Yep.
DJing and
Mhm.
performing and,
Yep.
the crowd feedback and all of that, and more about like paying
The business,
taxes
right.
and, booking
Getting those
events
things
and
done, yeah, and
making
making
sure
sure
I
you
make
have
enough
enough
money this month.
clients and
Yeah.
yeah, exactly, all of the
Yeah.
different things that
Because
become that.
it goes away from
Mhm.
that.
Right.
It's no
Yeah.
longer my
Yep.
fun, it's my work,
Yeah.
you know?
Well, I strongly suspect that that's why I don't really wanna play video games anymore.
Right, because you started making a podcast about it. You started doing
Yeah,
it.
I
You
did the
started make yeah.
podcast and I did the dissertation, and I spent so much of so many years just having that as the special interest in the thing that I was doing, that eventually it was just like, I just I'm not really engaged in this anymore. And not that I have any regrets. I love everything about Game On Girl and, that whole era of my life. It's just, it don't really fit the way it used to.
So it can be, speaking from experience with, leaving the business and getting rid of it, it's sort of a scary thing
Yeah.
because I knew that this was like something that it went from radio to the
Hmm.
live event stuff. And all of a sudden I'm selling the business and I'm walking away from it. And it felt good for a little bit. And then I started to miss it. And I
Yeah.
also started to think like there was a lot of, I'm sure you and I had conversations about this. It's like, what am I into? Like, what do I do now? Like, what?
Right. Yeah.
I have no hobbies. Like, what am
Yeah.
I? Who
Yep.
who am I? What?
Yep.
I'm just built, and then I uh, like couldn't figure it out. And then I realized like, oh, well, like it was 2020 when I jumped back into podcasting and doing, now
Yep.
doing, improv and live events and things like that, because I needed, like, there was a need
Yeah.
to,
I
I don't
think
know.
that
It's
that's,
sort of
yeah.
like breathing,
Yeah. Yeah.
like you got to
Yeah.
do it.
You still need it. And you were a performer. I was a performer. We were both in theater in high school. And I'm finding that draw now too. I would really like to get up on stage again. I would love to perform. And for a long time, my teaching was how I had my performance outlet.
Yeah.
That was a similar thing for me, being out, getting up in front of, my students and teaching filled that same cup, right? And I
Right.
don't, and podcasting does that now to a degree. Being
Yeah.
able to do the podcast definitely helps with that as well. But it's wanting to be in, I want to be in live theater now. I want to be, my
Right.
daughter's doing it and I'm like, oh, that's right, this is so fun.
Well, and actually that's another thing. It's like pushing your special interests on others.
Hmm.
That's something that you got to sort of watch out for, right?
It is.
Especially kids,
Yeah,
spouse.
especially kids. Yeah. Yeah, especially kids, especially your spouse. If your spouse, if you're having, if you're into heavy metal or whatnot and your spouse isn't, please don't subject them to it all the time. Or
Right.
don't expect someone else to adopt your special interest. Like my friend does not expect me to get into the wives of King Henry. She does not expect that. She deeply appreciates the fact that I recognize that it's her special interest and was like, hey, we got to go see the show.
Right.
If anybody needs to see the show, you need to see the show.
Right.
But she didn't expect that. But there is like, you have to be, mindful of like not dragging somebody into yours. And like I said, obsessions don't have to be unhealthy. Not that they won't be or can't be, but, there's nothing wrong with having something that has lit your fire or your passion and has inspired you for a long period of time. That's a beautiful thing, really.
It is. And I mean, I will say now that I'm, doing more of the improv, more of the fun stuff, like doing the podcasting, and, it's separate from the work stuff, although the podcasting stuff falls into it a little bit.
Right.
I do some stuff there. I do some video editing and, things like that, and content production. And, but sort of keeping those a little bit separate. Like I've got my own little thing that I'm doing, and I don't know. It sort of makes it more appealing to me to have it as a separate thing. And it took me a long time to really accept that it was okay to not monetize something.
Yeah.
Like I don't need to do that in order to feel good about doing it.
Exactly. Yeah.
But it's funny how that's just so like set.
It's capitalism.
But I will say, like, because I do these things and because I have these little escapes, it does make it where I'm probably getting more done at work.
Yeah.
Because I'm a happier person.
Yeah.
I'm a more, effective person. Because
you have filled your cup. Yeah. You have filled your passion. You have lit your fire. Like that's part of the power that special interests have, and part of the power that we can have with even hyperfocus, like, being able to, get really into something and learn a lot about something in a short period of time. Like those things and, invigorate that used to happen to me teaching. Like I'd get really into reading an article about something and then I'd infuse my teaching with it, one way or the other. And because I was excited about it, my students ended up being excited about it too.
So somebody listening, recognizing their, that they might have a special interest. Like, I know what I would say to them, especially based on what you're talking about, but what would you say to them?
Oh, a lot of what we've said, like if you feel like there's something that you put aside because somebody told you it wasn't appropriate for you to like it anymore, don't let somebody else influence your interest and your passion and your fire that way. Joy is rebellion. Like joy is what necessary. It's needed. It is a fundamental feeling we should all be able to experience at any point in time in our life. And if something brings you joy and you have put it aside, you don't need to monetize it. You need to justify it to anybody. Like just look at it as your anchor and as something that can bring you, satisfaction. It's important, it's significant, and it's okay.
Well, you said it's way more eloquently than I was going to quote Digital Underground and say, do what you like.
There you go.
So the other thing, Regina, if somebody listening wants to reach out to you and have these personal, because I got to tell you, if you're listening right now, I always feel better after talking to Regina. How do they reach out to set an appointment with you?
Please find me at my website at divergentpathsconsulting.com. You can book a free discovery call with me there, and you can find out about my one-on-one coaching services that I provide to late diagnosed. And you don't have to have an official diagnosis to work with me. I am perfectly comfortable helping people kind of understand their uniquely wired brains, as I'm often doing with Russ.
I'm like the sample.
Yeah, exactly. That's it for this episode of Divergent Paths. I hope this conversation gave you permission to revisit the things you love, whether it's dinosaurs, Dungeons and Dragons, or deep dives into 17th century textiles. Special interests aren't just quirky side quests. They're often how we come home to ourselves. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with a fellow nerd who needs to hear that their joy is valid. And hey, if you want to keep exploring what makes your brain beautiful, stay with us. Until next time, take up space, take a break, and take your joy seriously.